In the silent shroud of an early April morning, a scene unfolds that sends a chill down the spine of even the most hardened person. A sight that is both tragic and unsettling. Today's story is about a young woman who was murdered in the Tucson desert and became known as Jane Doe. If you're new to the channel, there are two kinds of videos. The first is specific for an active missing person, and the second is a story form of solved and unsolved cases. If you wouldn't mind, please like, subscribe, comment, and share the video. This greatly helps our channel. So let's journey into Jane Doe's story and how she was identified over 30 years after her murder. On April 8th, 1981, two hunters were out on the horizon with their rifles over their shoulders. The area is known for small game like jackrabbits and various birds. When one of the men spotted a blue jean jacket in a tree, intrigued, they walked towards the jacket, then called out asking if there was anyone there. Pausing, waiting for a response. Continuing their steps brought them closer to the jacket. A body was visible. A crime has occurred. In 1981, cell phones were not invented. The closest long-distance communication these two men had was a CB radio in their truck, and even that is limited to a few miles of range. One man stayed behind. He understood he was the custodian for her until help arrived. As the other jogged to his truck, he called for help on a CB until an officer responded, communicating the facts as he knew them. He then turned back and waited for the authorities. The detectives and the crime scene investigators approached. Their footsteps are slowed, respectful. They were able to tell the deceased was a female, but not much else. In the aftermath, the investigators combed through the scene, their keen eyes searching for the smallest signs of disturbance, looking for a scuff in the dirt, a broken twig, a discarded cigarette, but nothing. No identification, no purse. Just Jane Doe. In the face of such scant evidence, the police and forensic teams faced a daunting task. With no immediate clues to her identity, she was labeled as Jane Doe, a placeholder name that all too often becomes permanent in cases like this. What happens next in such cases when the body is not claimed or identified? Well, join us next week. We're going to cover that process. For today's story, know the medical examiner did an amazing job preserving Jane Doe and her belongings. For a short time, she laid in a cold storage facility at the morgue, her body preserved as investigators hoped for a breakthrough. Eventually, with no identity confirmed, family to claim her, she was buried in a potter's field, a grave marked by anonymity but surrounded by the silent prayers of those who hoped she would one day be named. When a case goes cold, different things happen. There are advocates for missing people, like this channel and others. There is a federal organization that logs and publishes names of missing people, but a website wasn't a thing in 1980. Jane laid in a potter's grave, then technology advanced faster, connecting people in moments, and information screamed across devices. Then in 2012, with new funding and advancements in forensic technology, the investigation into Jane Doe took a significant step forward. Her remains were carefully exhumed and a CT scan of her skull was conducted. This sophisticated imaging technology allows forensic experts to see the skull in fine detail, enabling them to create a more accurate reconstruction of what the person might have looked like in life. The process of turning a CT scan into a facial reconstruction involves both an art and science. Initially, the scan data is processed by specialized software that builds a three-dimensional model of the skull. This digital model is crucial for understanding the unique characteristics of the skull structure, which directly influences the appearance of the face. Once the digital model is complete, forensic artists come into play. These artists use a 3D model as a base, applying their knowledge of anatomy, tissue thickness, and cultural background to add layers of muscle and skin onto the skull. The artist must make educated guesses about Some features based on the demographic and biological data, such as eye color, skin tone, hairstyle, we cannot determine those from a skull alone. In more advanced cases, the reconstruction process might also be assisted by computer algorithms. That's the advancing technology we have today. Unfortunately, we didn't have that available in 1980. The result is a facial reconstruction, a face given back to the unnamed, which can be shared with the public through various media in hopes that someone might recognize the person and provide information that leads to her identification. Before she became known as Jane Doe in a tragic mystery in the Tucson desert, Brenda Garrow was living an ordinary life in Nashua, New Hampshire. Born into a close-knit family, Brenda was known for her bright smile and gentle, friendly demeanor that made her well-liked in her community. Growing up, Brenda attended her local school where she was an average student but loved art and creative writing. Friends recall her as someone always ready with a kind word, often seen sketching in her notebook or helping organize community events. She worked at a local diner, a job that she enjoyed for social interaction and a sense of community it brought to her. Despite the seemingly normalcy of her early years, those who knew her sensed a restlessness in Brenda as she approached her early 20s. It was longing for something different, a break from her familiar paths. This restlessness perhaps made her susceptible to the charms of John Kalhauser, a newcomer to Nashua, whose mysterious aura captivated her adventurous spirit. The decision to leave New Hampshire with John was sudden and shocking to her family. Brenda, who had never ventured far from her home, packed her life into a few suitcases and set off to Arizona. Driven by a mix of love, hope, and the promise of a new beginning, little did she know the adventure she envisioned would end so tragically. Her move to Arizona marked a significant and ultimately tragic turn in her life. John Kalhauser is a key figure in connection with Brenda Garrow's case. He was with Brenda when she moved from New Hampshire to Arizona. Kalhauser has a complex and criminal history involving multiple allegations and convictions. Kalhauser was first arrested in connection with another case, the murder of his wife, Diane Van Reeth, who disappeared in 1995. He served his time in prison for one murder, but not Brenda. He was called a person of interest and presumed innocent. The police have yet to arrest a person for Brenda's death. But let's celebrate that her identity was restored and hope that her killer will be brought to justice. If you enjoyed this content, please consider sharing, liking, and press the notification bell when new videos are released. If you want Quixer to cover a specific story, comment below, and as always, be kind.